Rob Guillory, it is such a pleasure to meet you. I have read Chew, I'm a huge fan of it, and I'm not the only one. I just wanted to talk to you about the inspirations that first got you involved in art.
It was really a natural vocabulary. I mean, my first art was probably made when I was like 2 or 3. I mean, it just came out of me. In 2001, when I decided to really get into this professionally, the internet was, kind of a thing by then. I could find the resources to learn how to do this. I realized I was never going to be a Marvel or DC artist, and I scrapped it and basically went back to almost stick figure type simplicity and grew it from there.
And what brought you to being part of Chew?
I had been kind of kicking around in the independent scene for a while, because my art is not mainstream, or it wasn't for that point in time. I was working in these small companies, nothing was really happening, and eventually I got referred to a guy named John Layman. He's been an editor at DC Comics for years. I dug him. He hit me up and said, hey, I got this thing.
He brought you on board with Chew.
Yeah, exactly. And he said, you might be the right guy for this. And we just clicked, and ever since then it's been awesome.
You actually live in Louisiana, is that right? And so much of the art world happens on the coast. It happens in California, it happens in New York. How did you build an artistic community when you're geographically in the middle?
I left a lot. I did a lot of traveling to California, and the internet kind of bridged the gap. It wasn't hard to build a kind of a community.
Tell me about Chew. Why has it been so successful?
Because it's really weird. The premise is there's a bird flu that kills about 100 million people worldwide, and as a result, culture is outlawed. So these chicken speakeasies that pop up, the FDA becomes basically Homeland Security and starts locking people up for eating chicken. The main character is a guy named Tony Chew. He is a sebopath, which means he is a food psychic. He gets psychic visions from what he eats. So whatever he eats, he sees the history of. And he's employed by the FDA to basically solve crimes using this ability to eat things, which means he eats a lot of horrible things.
The art of Chew has actually been pretty successful. We have some of it here in front of us. Is there anything in particular in terms of your style that you want to talk about or draw our attention to?
It's different, which for a lot of years kind of more of a hindrance than an advantage. I couldn't get work because of it. But now it's actually been my strength. It's very animation influenced, Warner Brothers, Looney Tunes, Tom and Jerry. All this stuff kind of came together and just merged and made this thing.
And when we look inside of it, I mean, you can see just in terms of composition and setup, like some of the decisions that you were making as an artist.
I am a big fan of simplicity. I don't do like crazy angles and all this fancy stuff that a lot of like other comic artists do. I'm a big fan of the motto KISS, keep it simple, stupid, and that is how I decide on composition. It has to serve the story. I feel like my primary mission as an artist is to forward the story and communicate that. It's a bigger priority than being pretty.
The story moves the art.
Right, that's the fun.
Of course. Talk about some of the other characters that Chew interacts with.
Well, there's this partner, a guy named John Kobe. He is the opposite of Chew. He's kind of like the stereotypical loose cannon, Mel Gibson type.
Oh, okay.
But he also happens to be part cyborg at some point. It's
I did notice that.
Yeah, it's very, very weird.
When you're at a place like Comic-Con and all these artists are here together, how do you feel that interwoven inspiration, all of these different fields being pulled together, how does that feel when you're at Comic-Con?
It can get a little intimidating. I'm all for the mixing, but Comic-Con is such a large-scale thing that it feels like almost too much for me. I actually kind of like being secluded a little bit. Like Louisiana, like I said, not a lot going on, but I think that's to my advantage because I don't know a lot of what's going on. I kind of am in a bit of a vacuum to create as opposed to being influenced to what's coming in.
How do you think the entire comic industry has been changing and has been shifting?
Obviously a lot more mainstream. It's okay to be a comic fan. You don't have to like be the geek in your mom's basement. It's okay. It's popular to be a nerd. I mean, with the comic movies, I mean, you have the Avengers making $1 billion at the box office. That kind of changes things. 9 times out of 10, when I tell someone what I do, they're like, "Oh, that's awesome," because it's a cool job. At the same time, I feel like there are some dangers there with it becoming mainstream.
What are the dangers?
The dangers are that you start focusing less on creating meaningful works and you start just trying to make money.
When anything becomes too commercial, it loses a little bit of its soul.
It can, Yeah. And I mean,
how do you keep your soul?
we care about what we're doing.
If you get a movie deal, I won't begrudge you, man. You've put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into this, and this deserves a big audience.